Americans make up just 4% of the world's population, but consume nearly 30% of its resources. In a single generation after World War II, a country defined by thrift transformed into the greatest consumer society the world has ever seen. This was not an accident. It was engineered. The story of how ordinary people were turned into perpetual consumers isn't just about what we buy. It's about who we've become. And it begins with a crisis that would reshape the American economy forever. As World War II ended in 1945, American planners faced a potential catastrophe. The war had pulled the country out of the Great Depression with massive government spending. What would happen when that spending stopped? The fear was a plunge back into economic despair. The solution they landed on would fundamentally alter American society, convert a wartime economy into a peacetime economy of mass consumption. A retail analyst named Victor Lebow put it bluntly in 1955. Our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we seek our spiritual satisfactions in consumption. This became government policy. The 1946 Employment Act committed the federal government to maintaining purchasing power. President Eisenhower's Economic Council chairman stated that the economy's ultimate purpose was to produce more consumer goods. What followed was revolutionary. The GI Bill helped millions of veterans buy homes in new suburbs. These new houses needed to be filled with appliances, furniture, and lawnmowers. The interstate highway system, launched in 1956, fueled the growth of shopping centers and a culture built around the automobile. Cars became status symbols, expressions of success. At the same time, television entered the living room. In 1950, only 9% of homes had a TV. By 1960, it was nearly 90%. For the first time, advertisers could reach millions with the same crafted message. The change was so complete that in 1959, during the famous kitchen debate, Vice President Nixon didn't boast about political freedom to the Soviet premier. He pointed to America's washing machines and TVs as proof of superiority. In less than 15 years, being an American citizen was no longer just about voting. It was about buying. But there was a problem. Most people couldn't afford to buy everything they were being told they needed. The solution required a revolution in how Americans paid for things. In 1949, a businessman named Frank McNamara forgot his wallet at dinner. Out of that embarrassment, he conceived of a card that could be used at multiple restaurants. A year later, he launched Diners Club. But the real shift came in 1958, when Bank of America mailed 60,000 unsolicited Bank Americards, what would later become Visa, to residents of Fresno, California. What most people don't realize is how deliberate this was. Internal documents from the time show that credit cards weren't just about convenience. They were designed to encourage spending beyond one's immediate means. The psychological effect was profound. Studies showed people spend up to 18% more when using a card instead of cash. The physical act of handing over dollars was gone, and with it, some of the pain of purchasing. Then, in 1978, a Supreme Court decision effectively eliminated state caps on interest rates. Credit card companies immediately moved to states with the weakest consumer protections. By the 1980s, the credit card had gone from a rich person's convenience to a middle-class necessity. American credit card debt exploded from $50 billion in 1980 to over $800 billion by 2020. The credit revolution had disconnected consumption from income. You no longer bought what you could afford today. You bought based on what you might earn tomorrow. But getting Americans to spend more required more than just easy credit. It required creating desire where none existed before. In the early 20th century, advertising was mostly about information, price, features. By the post-war era, it had become an exercise in psychological manipulation. The godfather of this was Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew. Bernays understood that people are driven by unconscious desires, not rational thought. His most famous campaign shows his method perfectly. To break the taboo against women smoking in public, he didn't run ads about tobacco. He staged a protest at the 1929 Easter Parade, where debutantes lit cigarettes as torches of freedom, linking smoking to female emancipation. The insight was revolutionary. Don't sell the product, sell the emotion, the identity. After the war, corporations invested heavily in this. Psychologists were hired to uncover the hidden meanings behind consumer choices. They found that products weren't being bought for what they did, but for what they represented. Your refrigerator wasn't just for keeping food cold. Its color and style were a statement about your status. Your car wasn't just transportation. It was an extension of your personality. Most insidiously, advertisers began targeting children directly. By the 1960s, kids' TV shows were designed primarily as vehicles for toy commercials. Studies showed that children under 8 couldn't distinguish between the program and the ad. The tactics worked. By the 1990s, the average American saw over 3,000 commercial messages a day. But even with credit and psychological manipulation, there was one final barrier. What if people were happy with the things they already owned? The solution: make sure those things wouldn't last. In 1924, the world's leading light bulb makers formed a secret cartel. Their goal wasn't to make better light bulbs, it was to make bulbs that burned out faster. They deliberately cut the lifespan of a bulb from 2,500 hours down to just 1,000, forcing consumers to buy more. This was the dawn of planned obsolescence, instilling in the buyer the desire to own something a little newer, a little better, a little sooner than is necessary. It takes 3 forms. First, technological obsolescence. Your new smartphone software update mysteriously slows down your old one. Second, psychological obsolescence. The fashion industry declaring last year's perfectly good clothes outdated. And third, physical obsolescence. Designing products with inferior parts so they break down. In the 1950s, a refrigerator lasted 30 years. Today, it's about 8. The average smartphone is replaced every 2 to 3 years. Repair has been systematically engineered to be difficult or impossible, requiring proprietary parts and special tools. The environmental impact is catastrophic, with landfills becoming monuments to our disposable culture. And the final irony: studies consistently show that after our basic needs are met, all this extra consumption has little to no effect on our happiness. But the story doesn't end there. Across the country, people are starting to challenge this consumption-based identity. The right to repair movement is gaining ground, pushing for laws that require manufacturers to make parts and manuals available. Minimalism has emerged as a powerful counterculture, asking people to consider if their possessions actually bring them joy. The sharing economy offers alternatives, like community tool libraries and clothing rentals. Financial independence movements explicitly reject the cycle of earning just to spend. And perhaps most encouraging is a generational shift. Younger Americans are more likely to value experiences over possessions, and to consider the environmental impact of their purchases. These movements aren't about returning to some idealized past. They are about reclaiming agency in a system that was designed to take it away. The transformation of America into a nation of shoppers didn't happen by chance. It was engineered through economic policy, financial innovation, psychological manipulation, and product design. Understanding this history isn't about assigning blame. It's about recognizing that what feels so natural was, in fact, constructed. And anything that has been constructed can be changed. For 75 years, we have been taught that to be American is to consume, that our self-worth is reflected in what we own. But there are other traditions. Ones that value creativity over consumption, community over competition, and purpose over possession. These traditions are being rediscovered. The question isn't whether we'll continue to buy things. The question is whether those purchases will be conscious choices that improve our lives, or unconscious reactions to a system designed to exploit our insecurities. America became a nation of shoppers by design. We can become something else by choice.